I know Murray has an awesome skirmish force of skeleton pirates, and today I want to make him something awesome. If you are as much of a fan of pirates as I am, you'll love this build. I'm going to create a massive bone golem, part ship, part Necrofex Colossus. It's going to be huge, and I'm going to do this because Hero Forge has sponsored this video and they want us to showcase a new kitbashing feature that I want to try and break. That's right, let's see how wild we can get, and let's have some fun with it. Mahatis. So as I said, I want this to be super ambitious. I'm going to be building a model up of multiple parts, pushing their kitbashing system to the absolute limit. People have been able to tell when a model is Hero Forge and it fits a particular aesthetic. With their recent face customization features and kitbashing, I'm confident that even that is going to be a thing of the past. So how can I prove it? Well, by making a giant bone construct. This thing is going to be the size of a Mega Gargant from Age of Sigmar and fieldable as a proxy for one. As one of my closest friends, when Murray speaks of things, I listen, and something he had repeatedly mentioned is how much he loved the Necrofex Colossus, which was added in Warhammer Total War as a unit that doesn't exist in Warhammer. So I want to add a little bit of the things I love, and that's bone golems and constructs inspired by my childhood playing games like Diablo and Necromancer Bone Golem. Love it. And a bit of what Murray loves, pirate skeletons, to create the ultimate toy for Murray to play with and add to his armies. So as I've broken this down, I'm going to need to use 6 different pieces for this build. We're going to need one heavy duty leg that's going to take a lot of the weight. As for the second leg, I'm going to make it piratey by including a giant peg leg, or as close of an approximation to that as I can. I'm going to want to include a central torso that feels like the bow of a ship. At the end of the day, this needs to be fieldable and look really good next to an undead army, so I think keeping bones as a theme across the whole model is really important. On top of this, I'm going to add an upper deck, and this is where the arms will attach. To finish out the build, we of course need arms, and one of them is going to be a multi-barreled cannon launcher, and finally, an anchor on a chain on a swinging arm. I'm really excited to dive into it, and to do that, well, I just open up Hero Forge. As I work through each element of this build, I want to talk to you a bit about what digital kitbashing is, about what this whole process is, and about how it's changing the landscape of designing models. I'm going to let you in on my thought processes and talk about some of the pitfalls, some of the pros and cons, and things that you could use at home. So when it comes down to this build is a kitbash, but it's not a traditional kitbash, it's a digital kitbash. Digital kitbashing is a concept that has been kicked around a bit recently, but for many people it might seem a little bit strange. Kitbashing historically is the process of combining elements of different kits and then filling any gaps with some green stuffing and sculpting. As the world moves increasingly digital and so many models are available for 3D printing, digital kitbashing is becoming more common, where you grab different files and kitbash them together. There are some strengths and some limitations with digital kitbashing. One of the biggest strengths is it's quite easy to do. There isn't a steep learning curve and it's easy to undo any mistakes you might make. Moving models in digital space means that you can clip them into each other in a way that physical kitbashing can't allow. You can also get fantastic outcomes because of the plethora of digital objects and their very low price to no price for some of them means it's very easy to add to your digital bits box, so to speak. However, one of the biggest cons with digital kitbashing is what would seem the simplest to the layperson. Basic functions or things that seem like common sense are actually really difficult for computer software to do. For example, filling voids in objects or connecting broken vertices. Combining objects and various other elements that you just think would work often don't work with digital kitbashing and can lead to massive issues with geometry, which causes massive problems with 3D printing. And this is where Hero Forge's digital kitbashing is an amazing new addition. All of the kitbashes you make with this software will be scanned and checked to see if they're A-OK for 3D printing. This does of course mean there's a few restrictions on what you can do if you're getting a physically printed model, but the main takeaway is you don't really have to worry about making things that aren't going to work. The software does the calculations for you and puts it together. This leg though is almost done, and it was really my experiment to toy around with the system. One thing that stuck to my head is something Brickman, a lovely Lego creator on Australian television and an avid Warhammer player, says a lot on Lego Masters. Good parts usage. It's basically a Lego term for using components in interesting ways outside of how they're typically meant to be used, and that is the key to getting the best results out of your kit bashes on Hero Forge. Grabbing items and using them in interesting ways. The foot foot here uses a bunch of traps and braces with Ezio-style hidden blades to create pistons. The whole thing looks really mechanical and sensible. I mean, the fact that the core of his foot is an upside-down bongo drum probably indicates how you have to get creative with your bits. So one thing to note when making these, as I move on to the second leg, the peg leg, that everything starts with an armature. All these model builds are based off of an existing character, as it is a character creation at its heart. So how you utilize and customize that initial armature is really going to be key to what you can get if you want to try crazy builds like this one. A huge change that's coming from Kitbash is actually something I've been asking about for literally years. Kitbashing allows you for greater control over the original model. So it's not just the ability to add props and move things around, but also the ability to customize the actual skeleton of the Hero Forge models you're making. This means for the first time ever, we have complete control over the posing and size of every element of the model. This means you can give your characters smaller hands and bigger feet, or whatever it is you need to make them fit into the game system you might be making a model for. If you prefer true scale, now you can do it with kitbashing. With the peg leg, it became really evident how important your digital kitbashing library is. And the great feature of Hero Forge is that it has literally thousands of items for you to pick from. As I created the peg leg, I decided to use a sword because I thought that vicious idea of a massive bit of rebar or metal plowing into the ground would look really cool. It's really stupid because, of course, walking up a beach, the sword would just penetrate the sand and it would get its leg stuck with every step. But I don't care. It looks cool. Also, picturing this thing kicking another Mega Gargant leads to a viciously gory outcome, and that's Super Warhammer. As I moved up to the torso, my third component, this is also where I made my first big mistake. My inspiration for this section was a saying that had stuck with me from somewhere from a long time ago. It was the expression, the bones of a ship. And what that referred to was the superstructure of a ship, but without the hull plating on it. The idea of the rest of it having rotted away and leaving that ribcage-like structure of the ship on the bottom of the ocean. I wanted to replicate this and make it a little bit more literal by creating the bones of this ship. And to do it, I oversized a skeleton and gave him a whole bunch of gnarly spider limbs that came out of his back, and then bent them all and shaped them to create grasping hands that would hold in a pile of pieces. These pieces included a massively oversized bag of candy. And Hero Forge, when you watch this, an item to maybe add for kitbashing that could be really cool is just sacks, generic sacks, big bags, sandbags, and the like. Those sorts of things could be really cool for people to fill out spaces and create nice greebling on their models. Now, I mentioned I made a mistake here, and that's because after I had built all of this up, there was an error with the export. This is still an alpha, and this is a problem that Hero Forge are going to fix, they assure me, and I'm only including it because I need to tell it as part of the story. It meant I couldn't actually save and download this file until I deleted one of the skeletons, but the skeleton I'd built as the primary model wasn't the torso, it was the guy hanging in the body, so I had to delete that massive 6-armed skeleton to export this model. Now, with kitbashing, to keep the model file sizes small, computers from exploding, and just to be feasible, there is a parts limit of 20 additional accessories to be added to the file. I could not replace the components of this skeleton. I was maxed, so I just had to ship it as is. It's worth noting, I didn't find the parts limit actually restrictive while I was building. Once or twice I maxed it out, but I was going kind of all out greebling this. For detailing out a standard character, considering the parts you add onto the character, such as gear, bags, accessories, don't count towards this limit. Don't think it's going to be any kind of problem when you're making your own characters.
Now, it is very hard to keep things from each other here at Tabletop Time. However, Dave has said that he is making a thing for my pirates, my undead pirates. Dave made a little mini campaign in his shop based around having a boat or a ship that you could upgrade, and you had this little force. It was kind of like Kill Team in Age of Sigmar. You basically built this little force, and I decided to go with skeletons because I love bloody skeletons. And we had the naval theme, so of course I went pirates. Sculpted and converted a few things, basically kitbashing a little pirate captain from scratch. It was so much fun. And this only happened because the Witch King model I wanted was out of stock. So it would not have happened if this model wasn't out of stock. So I built all these little models. My favorite is this skeleton that's taken his own skull off his shoulders and is placed it against the cannon he's firing. There's just a lot of character and goofy things you can do with skeletons. I loved it. Their rules sucked. I did poorly, but it was so much fun. The pirate ship was a lot of fun to build. I made one because I could, and that's basically where it stopped. But Dave loved it, I loved it, and as his want, he's making more and basically poking me in the back to continue making them. And I don't know what he's doing. The only hint I have is that I've mentioned a few times to Dave the design of the Necrofex Colossus from Total Warhammer, which is super cool, but there's no way he's making that. There's no way he can. How would he make it?
Next up was the cannon arm, and this bit was the most inspired by the Necrofex Colossus. I'd also recently played Fallout 4 and gotten a handheld pirate cannon from a quest, so I was loving the vibe of just cannonballs firing out of cannons that don't make any sense. So we've got a triple barreled cannon. Don't ask me how this thing reloads this, it's magic. It shoots out flaming skulls, who cares? A feature that was super helpful when I was working with this is the ability to group pieces together. So once I had these 3 cannons together, I could group them and nest them as one, so their alignment to each other was always correct. It would have been a nightmare having to reposition each individual cannon every time I made a tweak to the pose of this arm. This arm was also a really fantastic opportunity to show off greebling and also using the armature in an interesting way. I oversized the legs on this one and gave it a bit of a double jointed skeleton arm, and then I hid parts of that shape and the fact that it obviously looked like a skeletal torso without arms using some cloth wraps. This upper deck of this boat may be the most extra hat a skeleton has ever worn. As I mentioned before, all the models in Hero Forge are built off a base armature, and by this stage in the build, with a bunch of experience, I'd realized I didn't need to use the body as the core of the build. No, I could accessorize, or use it as an accessory. So for this part, I decided it'd be really cool to have a skeleton hanging down from a mast. So the core skeleton that this is technically a kit bash of is just a little bony guy hanging off the mast. The hanging skeleton is a small detail, but it's really important because it's gonna set the scale of this model. That's going to be our frame of reference for how big a 28mm miniature is going to be. So it's gonna give you an idea of just how massive this model is going to end up. The whole time I was making this upper deck, I was just thinking of Murray's awesome pirate skeletons, and I don't know how we're gonna make it happen, but one day I wanna see even just a small game where Murray rolls out a whole army of bony boys with this gargant stomping down the middle. Now with the upper deck finish, you can see that this doesn't look like a Hero Forge model at all. I mean, it's the top deck of a boat. So how am I gonna ship it? Well, interestingly enough, Hero Forge can actually deliver these models physically as well as STLs. We're gonna show the full list of materials on screen that you can print your models with. However, it's worth noting there are little things you can do with an STL download that you won't be able to do with a physical miniature. There is a print compatibility scan feature, and you cannot finish the checkout unless it is ticked, which is really good because it means you're not gonna run into any problems 3D printing. And I think this is a great step to make sure this stays beginner friendly. But for someone who's doing an STL download, I can break those rules a little bit and have my dude fully suspended and hanging in the air. I do wonder what this would look like printed and sent to me by Hero Forge HQ though. It's kind of wild to think that we live in a world where that can happen. And with all these thoughts and the process of me kit bashing and making this giant golem, all I can think about is how much I've already improved using the software. The anchor arm, this chain flail and shipping element all combined into one is probably my favorite piece of the whole build. I got better at hiding things, better at using greebling, and better at utilizing the tools at my disposal to represent something. For me, it really feels like this arm works as a mechanical construct with a chain that can retract on this nice spool, and all of that is made up of elements not even remotely related to one another. The chain that wraps around the spool, yeah, they're like a dog collar. That's not a part that is part of the chain flail. It's wild. But I will give a caveat as you've watched this. Everything you've seen is subject to change. The Hero Forge kit bashing features are all in alpha, and they will change before they're fully released to the public. It's their pro subscribers that are going to get access to all of these features, and a pro subscription is actually super cheap, so consider checking it out if you'd like to. I've had so much fun working with kit bashing, and I'm honestly shocked with what I've come up with. So if you would like to try out Hero Forge's kit bashing, make sure to check out the links in our description. We also have a code, Tabletop Time, for 10% off digital STL downloads. Hero Forge is completely free to play around with. You can make your characters and see if you like them, paint them digitally, and experiment with outcomes without committing to anything. So there's really no reason not to give it a try. Check it out, subscribe, and you'll be able to use kit bashing right away. There are heaps of other features to explore, but I think we've covered it pretty extensively, so go click the link in the description. But to see the final effect, I do have to take it into Blender, make sure it all fits, and do some basic functions. So I import all of these pieces into Blender, and then I position it as if I'm going to construct it. I can then use the Boolean function to basically cut away any overlapping features to ensure a snug fit when Murray builds it. I also created a couple of pegs in areas that I thought would be difficult due to the weight and size of the model, and these were all necessary minor tweaks that did have to happen due to the nature of our extremely ambitious twisting of Hero Forge's kit bashing. Overall, I'm shocked. This is not designed for this. This is designed to make really cool custom models. The things you can do with this are going to change the landscape of custom minis, genuinely. Anyone can create whatever they want now, and that's pretty sweet. Let's see what Murray thinks.
Dave has done an awesome job. Like, how does he? This is wild. That's super cool, and it's now my turn to assemble it and get it ready for painting. Here goes nothing. It's done. And it actually went together with not many issues whatsoever. Like, nothing fell off. It's just solid resin, and it worked. This is feasible. It worked. There was no magic, no hijinks. Now, there is one more thing that needs to happen before I paint this, and it's that Dave has not seen this constructed yet. He's only seen, the assets on the computer screen. He hasn't seen this in the flesh, as it were, yet. So I'm gonna go grab him, and we're gonna get like a legit reaction. Reaction time. Let's go.
Oh, cool. Oh my gosh. This is really cool. Well done putting it together. The biggest shock of this is like looking at this and going, this is a Hero Forge model. This is a Hero Forge model. This is like the centerpiece model of like a month's Patreon subscription, and I just made it. Hell yeah. I can't wait to see it painted. This is gonna be so cool. Have fun.
Since this is such a big model, I decided to use aerosols to paint everything with colors, namely blues, greens, and a red.
If you also have no idea what he's doing, thumbs up this video.
But once that was done, it was time to actually pick up a brush, and I immediately just started painting the wood, focusing on creating wood grains where there wasn't any because of the size differences on the objects that Dave had shrunk or enlarged into ridiculous proportions. I decided to mix things up and use a variety of different woods, as this is an amalgamation of different ships from different factions, eras, bottom of the sea, top of the sea, everything come together, so I wanted to look very slapped together. To do this, I used a couple of different hues of browns, but also made sure to mix in some greens to some of them. This will give a really rotten, mildewy effect that I think is going to work really well for the undead. Next on the list is all the beaten, worn, and rusted metal. And to start with that, I need some darker tones. As my aerosol has brought everything up quite a bit, I need to knock it back again. So I grabbed some dark blues and purples and just stippled them where I wanted some contrast and some reflective areas on all the metal parts. Then when that's done, I'm going to start stippling with a very ruddy brown. This is going to be the basis of all the rust. And once again, I'm just going to stipple this where I think is an interesting area or would build up a lot of rust, particularly around scratches and pockmarked areas. And then when that's done, it's time to start working on the layers of the metal, all the reflective shiny bits. And the more rough the metal, the more scratchy and ponderous you can be with the brush. And you can see I'm just scribbling and dragging my brush all over the place, almost like I'm tickling it with a feather.
If you'd like that experience, here's my phone number.
And with that approach in mind, I'm going to start with a darker blue and then work all the way up to an off grey, making sure to be more and more sparse with each iteration I do as I get brighter, as this final lighter stage should only hit the sharpest highlights. And then up next is painting all the bones, all the little undead skeletons. And of course I want them to match the rest of my army, all the sun-dried and parched and bleached skeletons, so I want them to be really saturated and vibrant. You see, a lot of skeletons are painted cold. I want these to be very bright. And to do that, I'm going to choose saturated browns and some ochre colors. And now that I've finished these three most vital aspects of my army, the beaten metal, the wooden ship parts, and the dried parched skeletons, it's time to do all the extra details. All the torn cloth, and for the figurehead, I decided to paint it jade, as this will really stand out and really draw the eye in. For the final touches, it's onto the base, and I'm going to heavily dry brush it in theme with the rest of my army, aka a beach. But as you can see, I've left an area here that is going to be underwater. And now this is my plan. I'm going to mix more blue into the sand mixture here, go about dry brushing it exactly the same way, and then Then I'm going to lay a UV resin over the top. Then I'll cure it, and using just a little bit of white paint, I'm going to create the effect of the surf. And just like that, I have finished a completely 100% Hero Forge model that is taller than nearly any Games Workshop monster I have ever painted. This thing is literally the size of like an Imperial Knight. And now it's time to show it off in some reveals.
We'd like to thank our patrons for your wonderful support, and I'd like to give a special warm welcome to our newest patrons: Kyra, Sofa, Lord of Couch, CS, Alex Jensen, William Raising, and Ryan Edwards. Thank you so much for joining up and supporting the channel. It really does help us out and lets us keep doing this and making content for you every week. All right, this has been an adventure. Murray, what? Oh my gosh, it's so good. It's like everything that I dreamed it would be.
You did this in Hero Forge. I had to keep repeating that to myself. This was a Hero Forge model.
Yeah, this wasn't some like big patron exclusive like mega mini of the month. I made this, and very soon you'll be able to make it too using Hero Forge's Kitbashing. Stay tuned to Hero Forge's pipes. Follow the link in the description and start modeling today. But Kitbashing will be available for pro subscribers very soon, so make sure to go and check all that out. This is awesome. You've done such a great job painting that up, and well, I hope there's enough love for you to make more pirate people.
Oh, I think so, yeah. Yeah, I mean, I can't wait to see what other people do after this.
Absolutely.
Like, if this isn't a showcase of what you can do, I don't know what is.
I wanted to break it, and I didn't. I failed. I just made something really cool, so that's awesome. All right, thanks for watching, everyone. Bye. It was meant to cut, bye.